there's some of my videos and stuff that are based on Irish mythology, and you could say that those stories, or whatever the case is, or the minds that those stories came from, you're going back thousands and thousands of years, if not tens of thousands of years, okay? So, and you might be wondering, like, so why are you talking about this, and in the next video you're talking about what's going on in Clonmel? And the answer to that is that I don't see that there's any real fundamental difference between the two things. Stories and mythologies and ways of making sense of the world, grand narratives that we apply to the world, or that we seem to perceive from the world in that kind of reciprocal relationship, they come from the minds of people, okay? And we don't really understand minds or psychology, or how different traits seem to wave across the generations, and why some people pick them up and others don't, and seem to go against them, whatever the case is. We're very infantile in our understanding of this. There's been great speakers across the generations, across the centuries and millennia, that have spoken in a way that attempts to make sense and capture all of the things that come from the human mind, the human being. Modern day psychology tends to just look at brain activity and the chemical composition of that brain activity and what's going on around the body, the brain, in a given situation, in a given environment, okay? And that's interesting to a large degree, okay? And we can learn stuff like that, but it doesn't really, existentially, in terms of you feeling about your experience as a sentient, living human being, we don't really necessarily think of my brain activity as feeling this, therefore I am sad today. We think of what we see in front of us. My dog just got bulldozed by a post office van, and that has rattled me. You know, like, so we base our feeling on what we're experiencing in the world, okay? And there's a dance, there's a relationship there, because how I feel about the world tends to colour how I perceive the next thing that happens, okay? And on and on and on. And depending on what happens next, that'll affect me in whatever way it may be, and that will also change or influence the way I see myself in a given situation, okay? So there's a constant feedback loop there. So for me, when I'm talking about ancient mythology, I don't see it as ancient. I see it as tendencies in the Irish mind and the Irish psyche. And each of the characters represents certain human tendencies, okay? And they also have multiple of traits too. It's not just a black and white thing. So you have a devil and you have a god, and they both constantly fight each other. Irish mythology is a little bit more nuanced than that. You don't tend to have explicit moral condemnations or judgments on each of the characters. They kind of state them for what they are, what their traits are, and they kind of leave you to engage and to pour yourself into the story and see how you relate to the activities from the people in the stories, okay? So with that being said, I just want to talk for a minute or so about Ogma, who's an old Irish god, if you want to call it, or an old Irish figure that came from the Irish mind, okay? And what his traits are, he's pictured firstly with a club, or a big stick, you know, a big hammer, if you want to call it that, like a Thor kind of a thing, but it's looks like a big wooden club. So power, strength, courage, tenacity, a tendency towards violence if needed. But he's also the god of poetry. In the Irish, what would you call it? I can't think of the word. Nomenclature, whatever you want to call it. In the Irish pantheon, or in the Irish mythology, nearly every second god is related to poetry, which is interesting. So you've the long-standing relationship between the Irish people and the spoken word and the written word. And the written word is said to have come from Ogma, the creator of the Ogma alphabet, okay? Or the Ogma way of writing, the script, okay? So he's also called Kermit, like Kermit the Frog, okay? But Kermit in Irish, meaning the honey-mouthed. So he's a sophisticated orator. He is the creator of words, the written language of the Irish people. And there's also a depiction of him with, I suppose, slaves or his followers who are chained to his tongue and being pulled along. Okay, so you can see where power with the club might not necessarily be just a physical power of brute force. It might also be a manipulative power through the use of words, through the manipulation of language. Okay, a modern soothsayer, a kind of prophet, if you want to call it. You know, these well-spoken, silver-tongued demons, as they say. So it's interesting to have a look at that and understand that thousands of years ago, in the Irish understanding of humanity and what the experiences and the different tendencies of human beings can offer people, they came up with this vision of this God or this entity that embodies the idea of being strong in yourself, being honest with your word, being sophisticated in your articulation of things to such a degree that you would be able to lead people with your tongue alone, with your words. Okay, so if you want to say to me that Irish mythology has no relevance to today, I would just ask you to explore that point. Does the image of Ogma maintaining and holding power via his ability to manipulate or his ability to lead with inspiring words, because it can go either way, okay? I think that's the point of it. As with all good mythology, there's room to maneuver and explore there, so you can have good leaders who speak very well and speak honestly and truthfully, and people can follow that. Or you can have sophisticated deceivers who speak in a way that so many people can find palatable without actually saying too much, or by hiding your intention behind your rhetoric. Okay, so that is perfectly applicable today, and I would imagine as long as human beings hear and speak, that will be applicable for the rest of eternity. So it's just something to mull over, because if you're finding there's not much out there in the world to inspire people at the moment, people in good, strong positions of society seem to be a little bit more untrustworthy. It's hard to take them serious. You're not really, what they're saying doesn't really line up with what you're perceiving in your day-to-day business. So you might feel a little bit helpless and lost. And I would urge people to go back, as these are your stories if you're an Irish person, or whatever walk of life you come from, or whatever ethnic group you come from. Go back and read your people's stories and see what their understanding of humanity was. Don't take your understanding from people from a pulpit, whether it's in a priest's garb or whether it's in a scientific robe. You can read your own things and develop your own emotional relationship with these things and see if they work for you in some way. You know? Because stories speak to you just as you're given sense and meaning to these stories by reading them and by bringing them to life, so to speak. They also tend to revivify something in ourselves, okay? So I would urge people, pick up a book or just Google or whatever and have a look at these characters and see what Irish people, your ancestors, were thinking of and creating and imagining based on their experience, the stories and the characters and the situations that they get entangled in. They're all everyday human misery and human suffering sort of stories. They just have a garb of, I would say, infinity, because these are timeless stories. Whereas if you leave a story of me from this particular point in time, people will take it more as a historical account of a thing, and they'll accept it as that, right, that was part of history, and that's all we take from it, is the dates and the details. With mythology, there's more to that. It's a little bit deeper, it's a little bit more nuanced. It's asking you a question just as you're reading the lines, okay? So give it a go, have a look, and if you're interested in that sort of stuff, throw down your favourite character or whatever and what that means to you and what your understanding of it is, because there's wisdom to be taken out of it. Bible, whatever you want, whatever book you want to take from older minds, okay, that weren't so easily distracted as we probably are in this day and age with all the gadgets and all that stuff, okay? So give it a go, have a look, good luck.